So this is the SQL application. This is the SQL application, and the SQL stands for Structural Query Language. Now, basically, there are two things you do here with the SQL. Time to time, when we teach participants, I make sure they know the two things. Okay. Now, the whole essence of this dashboard is for you to be able to add your data and also for you to be able to read your data. And you'll be able to do that through the SQL. So that's what the SQL does. It adds data and also reads data. And of course, as an analyst, you know it's very important in as much as you'll be working with data. So your task always begins with you creating what we call a database. Sorry, I will be muting everyone now because of the background noise. Okay, so once you have opened your SQL Workbench, which is one of the tools you use to write your queries or your statements based on what you want to analyze. Once you've opened it, your first task is to create a database. So after hitting take notes. So when you've installed, okay, our previous videos, I will put you through on those installation setup. That's the setup. When you're done setting up, this is the screen you get to see when you go to open the SQL file, okay, which is called the workbench. Now, once you have opened it, it's a database because every data must be contained or must be stored in a database. So you must do that. If, for example, let's use this example for tonight's class. Let's say we're asked to run an analysis for the election that was just concluded. It means that for us to do that, we must have a database. For example, INEC have a database where all those electoral results are being stored. So the database is just one of those building blocks, which stands for where data are stored. So you must begin with creating that very database where your data will be stored. So I can come here and give my database a name. I believe you're following, sir, at Sir item. So I can come here and decide to give it any name depending on the task I'm working on. So I will say, whenever I want to create a database, always starts with the command word create. Create. So that's one of the SQL command languages. So I'll just say create. Now you don't need to any way you want to type it, whether it's a mixture of both capital and small letter doesn't matter. The reason is because all SQL cares about is you getting the complete spell, making sure for that very command statement. The name of it will say we want to create a database. What's the name of the database going to be called? I can say it's going to be called election. I can just come and say create database election. So once I'm done with that, I will then bring down my semicolon. So you always bring down your semicolon because, like I told you, sorry, let me grant someone access. Okay, at Cynthia, welcome. I believe you can hear me now. All right. So, like I said, that any way you want to spell the create, whether you want to make it capital letter, whatever way, that is not a problem to SQL. What SQL does is that it reads, that's what the SQL does, where we are. It reads the data you've entered to this end to know where it ends. So each of your SQL statements must always be ended with this semicolon because that's what helps SQL to know that this is where this statement ends. So this is just how to create your database. After creating your database, the next thing is for you to execute it. and that's the aspect of action to ensure that it runs. So to do that, we have these two icons above here. We have the first icon and the second icon. So those are the two icons you use whenever you want to execute the query statement you're putting down. So always take note. For the first, is this different from the second? If you want to go with this first, it means that each time you want to execute, you must highlight before using this first option. So this first option is used to run your query, to run your statement only when you've highlighted or selected it this way. If you do not do that and you come here and click on it, it's not going to run. So you must take note of that. But for the second executed icon here, okay, for the second one, you don't need to do anything like highlighting or selecting. All you just have to do is just to keep your cursor at the end, and provided the cursor is at the end, when you click, it's going to run successfully. Now, each time you run any analysis or whatever data you're working with, if it is successful or not successful, it's going to be displayed below where we have action output. So this action output pane or area is used to show you those queries that are run successfully, or those queries that are run and are not successful. It could also be other applications like the VBA, which I also teach. We call it the immediate window. It gives you an immediate result of the query you've imputed. So it's very important. So your workflow, the cycle begins with you creating a database for that stacks for that project. Sorry, let me grant someone into the class. So if we are going by this, let's use this second icon. So if I'm clicking on it, what do you notice? Look at the action outputs area. You can see it has been ticked what? Green. It has been ticked green. And you can see there is a message telling us what? That one role have been what? Affected. Meaning that this is a role and this role have been what? Affected. So your task must begin with you creating a database. Now that we have created this database called election, where should it appear? It should appear at this left part, which we call the navigator window. By the time those of you who have learned Power BI and those who have not, by the time you learn Power BI, you'll get to understand the navigator window, that it shows you, those queries that you have created. As this is the navigator window that displays it for you. And here in SQL does not make any provision on how to create database from a direct aspect. What do I mean? By the time you've opened your SQL, you will notice that if you come above, you will see where we have database at the menu. On a normal basis, it means that if you want to create your anything database that has to do with working with database, you're supposed to be able to access that information from this database section. Sorry, more persons are trying to join. Let me grant them access. I happen to my database. I should just come to database above and say create. But right here, we don't have any option for creating database. So that's just what I mean by not having a direct pattern for doing that. What it only provides is how you'll be able to connect to your database, or how to manage connections, or how to also migrate, use the migration wizard, or to search table data. Please, those joining, you can. So having that understanding, it therefore means that if you're a data analyst and you want to create a database for a particular project you are assigned to work on, when you open your SQL workbench, where you should go to is what we call the schemas. So for those of you who have been missing different classes, take note. When you open your SQL workbench, you get to see that it's divided into two sections. We have the administration, which takes care of all administrative affairs, and we have the schemas. So as an analyst, your most concern is on the schema section, most especially when it has to do with database creation and analysis. So you come to schemas. Schemas is not called database, but that's the terminology used to replace database in SQL. So once you're there, you then follow this syntax. This is what we call a syntax. A syntax is a formula. A syntax is a pattern on how things should be done. So analysis is all about programming. It's all about following the syntax. If the code is this way, you write it that way. That's what programming is all about. So we have just created this using the second run execute icon. And if we look at our action output window below, you see it's successful, ticked green. But we're expecting this to appear under the navigator section here, but it's not there. So each time you've run any query, always look at this the top here. You will see we have this refresh button. Always click on it. It's going to refresh it for you. If it was to be a table that appears, maybe you've selected so information from extract, you want to extract, you also see that same refresh on that extracted file. You'll see what I mean as we proceed. So if I want to find if election database have actually been created, I will click on this icon here. When I refresh, you then find out what we have this option called election. Now, you must understand that every database must contain a table. That is where your data is going to be stored on. So for that reason, for a database like election, those of you who saw the election result and everything, you notice it was in a tabular format. So for that type, it means you must come and create a table for this database. So now, how do you create a table for this? There is also a syntax you have to follow. Now, before you do that, it's important that you specify or you inform SQL to know which database you're working on. If you look at my screen here, you'll notice I have so many databases. And that's the reason why analysts will always come and use a syntax we call the use command. The use command to specify that at this point in time, I want to work on this database called election, because for now, it's not specified. So to do that, I will come and type in and follow the syntax that says what? Use. So let me let someone in. That says what? Use. So I will say use. What's the name of the database? You're not going to write this database. You just enter only the name. Out of the navigation section, the name is what? Election. So I say use election. So once I've specified that, I told you every query you write must always end with a semicolon. Because what the SQL does is SQL enables you to add and also read your data. So we want SQL to be able to read this data for us. We have read it on our own, but SQL should read it for it to be executed. So we must hit with this semicolon. Then we'll come and click on execute. If we want to use the first one, I will just come and select, highlight, and say execute. You can see it's ticked green right there on the output window. Please, if at any point you are not hearing, just notify me. So if you observe from the navigation section, you will see that the election is now what? Bold. Election is now bold. Now, if we are saying the database for the election, it therefore means at this point, we have to create a table format for INEC. We have to create a table. So what do? I'll also create a table. Now, the syntax for creating your table, there's always a syntax for doing that. So each time you're creating a table, you specify create table and the name of that table. Then you must put the contents. What and what is that table going to contain? You must put those contents. Now, when you're creating a table, you must know this, that a table is going to contain two things, or a table contains two things, the columns and the row. So the first thing you have to create are the columns. But here in SQL, to impute the columns, you use an open bracket and a close bracket. Then you use your semicolon to end. So SQL will be able to read it. So for that sake, it's inside this bracket. I'm going to specify those columns for this table called political parties. So let's say political parties or their results and so on. So I can come here now at this point and say the first thing I want, information I want, I can break it down. And one thing you should know is that you can even bring this down. There is no problem with it. It will still run. Okay. Anyhow you want to drop it down, it will still run. Because what SQL is concerned about is this semicolon. SQL will still read it and find out that it doesn't end there. It will come down and read it. Normally we'll call it the step into. So SQL will step into each of them. It's at this point SQL will stop, believing that it stopped at this point. I'm recording this so that no one will find it difficult to understand this again, because we will not touch anything like this again. So since I have the syntax written this way, I can also decide to put a break within and then capture what the contents are going to be for these parties. So we can say, first of all, we want to have a column for, let's say we want to have a particular column. Let's say we want to have a particular column for the ID, which is going to be like their different numbers. Now, one thing you need to understand here is this. Okay. Now, we have what we call data types. Every data have their types. We have what we call a string. When it comes to SQL, string is used for those data types that are going to be in a text format. Okay. So SQL has its own terminology for strings. It has its own terminologies for numeric data type. For example, since IDs are going to be numeric, like numbers, I'm going to use what we call integer, that's int. You can see it here, the shortcut, int. So I'm just going to take that. So once I've done that, if I like, I can put my comma. If I don't like, I can still leave it. Like I told you, SQL is going to step into this and come down and stop at this point where you have the semicolon. Now, as an analyst, it's expected that you do your things quick and faster. So therefore, each time you're writing any query that involves numbering, see if you know that you'll be you might want to enter number 1, number 2, and so on. It's better you set up a simple statement that is more like going to make it run on its own automatically. meaning you don't need to number that information. So what do I mean? Remember what I said, that you use this int, which is going to help you determine that this is a number. That's the purpose of this type, this data type. Why the string determines the string you use for those texts. And I'm going to show you how we do it here. So if we are saying ID is we use the int for that data type. And also another thing I want you to understand too is this. Now, if for example, I said that I want it to always run automatically, SQL provides a syntax too, which we call auto increment. So it means that I have to come here and also specify the auto increment. You can see that command pops up and I tap it. So with this, each time I'm running the analysis in this database, I don't need to number it. As I'm entering maybe I'm entering results for states, automatically it's going to pop up the number. Why? Because I've already specified this command. And that's what programming is all about. It's all about, knowing the syntax and you play around with those things. Now, it's also important that when you're creating, starting up through these setup processes, it's expected that you always ensure you do some little setup that's going to help you avoid some errors. And for those persons who have attended my Excel classes, we always talk about those possible errors. For instance, sorry, let me add someone in. For instance, we have errors like blanks, which I said that those kind of blank errors always affects the outcome of your data when you are done and want to execute it. Same way it does when you're using SQL. So for that reason, this is what analysts do. For that reason, analysts always specify, I don't want this table I'm creating for political parties results to be blank, to show any missing figure, any missing results. I have to come after the data type and specify the null statement. Null stands for blank.
We can't hear you again.
I'm going to say not null. Not null. Which means what? Which means, all right. So let me continue the record. Okay. So I said for that reason, you must that I don't want the first row, the first column. I don't want any of those information to be what? Blank. So for that sake, I can just do this. Then remember I told you about since this is an ID, instead of ending it at this point, I might decide to also bring that auto increment that led automatically this ID automatically to enter an information that this column is going to contain. So I will come and after giving a space, I will say auto increment. Then I use my comma to continue. Now, once I'm done with this, I want to enter that column. When the next column name of the You don't want to specify it. If you watch political parties, I didn't give a space. So depending on how you want yours to be written, you can use underscore. That's the two ways. Either you use an underscore to say name of political party, or you can join them together. So I can just say name of political party. Now remember, I told you that there are different data types and that we have what we call the string. Now to determine a string in SQL, you use what we call the varchar. Since this information here for this column, the name of this column, this title column, is in a text format, the results you're going to post into is in a text format, you must use that varchar string. So for that sake, same way we use int for ID, numeric. So I will come and say and specify that this is going to be a string called varchar. So I will come here and say varchar. Now, one thing you need to know is this. Same way I told you that this null that we added here is going to make sure that this table always have an information. Let me, okay. So don't forget, like I said, that after you specify the string, always put this very information here, this which we said is called the not null. And I said that you're to add this null to make sure that the table always have a political name and it's not blank when you're inserting your data. So once you've done that, I then made mention of a unique identifier, and that for the sake of the fact that you will be asked to extract data, to sort data, to filter data, in your data set, each table must have a unique identifier, just like Excel, where you use the VLOOKUP. Now, when it comes to SQL, the unique identifier is always called the primary key. The primary key. So as an analyst, you must come down and specify what is your unique identifier from this table you have created. So you must come and then enter the primary key. So I will just say primary key. So what do I want to be my unique identifier? I can say the ID. If it is name, I will specify the name of political party there. So that time to time, when I'm asked to sort out my data, I know that I'm going to use the names. If I want to sort out and I want my primary key to be the ID, the unique identifier to be the ID, is from this part here, I'm going to run that command. So same way, I'm just going to open bracket and insert ID as my primary key. So the primary key is just the unique identifier of all those individual records you will have inside this table. You know that this table contains different columns. So it is this ID number that is going to be the identifier of those columns in this table. So just know that that's what we refer to as primary key. I know some persons have asked that question before. That's just how to set up primary key. Once you're done with it, you can run this statement to show if this is successful. So you can go and view your table you have created for political parties. To do that, the second executed option can be used, or the first. I will use the second since I don't want to highlight it. I will click on it. Now when I click on it, hello, I hope everyone can still hear me. Now when I click on it, if you look at the action output section, you observe that it sticks green, meaning that it's successful. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So you can see that it's successful because the action output area must be ticked green to indicate it's successful. Now, once you're done, you're expected to go to the navigator section and check that very database. So if I go to check, I'll come over here. Now, when I clicked on it, on the database election, tables is empty. Tables is empty, meaning that table is not what? Reflected. So let me add someone into the class. So when I click on it, you notice that under my election database, there is no table which I have specified for political parties. That's the reason why each time you've created, refresh. So if I refresh by clicking on the icon, you observe that under that election database, we now have the table icon popped up with this arrow, meaning that there are things contained in this table, which the number one is the columns, which we have created, column for ID and column for name of political party. So if I want to view that information, I will click on this arrow. When I click on it, it brings a drop-down information for political parties, which you agree we created it together. Now, if I want to view what and what are contained in this table, because you can create as many tables as possible, even within one database. And some of you might have heard of data modeling. Data modeling is very important because it's just all about you being able to create relationships between different data sets. This data set is one for political parties. We can have another data set for local government areas. That's another table. We can have as many as possible for polling units. At the end of the day, you're expected to create relationships, and that's what we refer to as relational databases. There are relationships between one or more tables. But we're not talking about that now. So if you want to view what this contains, I'll click on this and you'll see where we have columns. I will now click on this arrow to columns. It shows me the columns we have within this table. We have column ID, we have name of political parties column. We'll view it. But before that, remember, we specified the primary key for this table. How do we view it? We'll come to index. If I click on index, you're going to see primary. So this shows that the primary key have been enabled, which is this primary key ID. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is what we refer to as foreign key, but I'm going to create another to use that to explain the foreign keys. Remember I told you that the primary key is identifier within that table. But where you created one or more tables and you want to use a particular information there to like reference the other tables that are separated from that very table, that information you use becomes what we call the foreign key, because it's like a stranger being used from another table to reference other tables. Let's look into that quickly. But before that, let's view this table we have created for political parties. How do you view it? You have created a table, so how do you view the table? All you just need to do, when you have opened tables, political parties, under political parties, you'll see three icons. Come to the last one, click on it. When you click on it, you will see that it brings up the table we have created. For what? ID, name of political parties. So you can see those informations. That table have been created, but now no information have been entered into that table. Now let's look at the foreign keys, how it works. So let's create another table. Remember, I told you can create as many tables within a data set. So let's create another table. So I'm just going to go back to this first file. We're not looking at the political parties yet. So same way here, I'm just going to come down since it's the same database and say create. Now what do I want to create? I want to create a table. So what do I want to call this table? I may say I want to call this table results. So I say results. Same way, you must specify the brackets there. So I'll just do a quick one, bracket open, bracket close, my semicolon. So inside this bracket, I will now specify the content of this table, this result table. So I'll just break this down. I told you you can even break this down. It doesn't matter. It will still run, provided you end these statements with this in case. So I have to come and also specify the political party ID. ID. Now the ID is also a numeric data type. So I say int. Do I want it to be blank at any point? No. So I must put my not null. Then I say comma. Remember, we are specifying this information. So now we have to bring that of our primary key, which we know that we are trying to rename it as this information. So I'll come here and say primary key. Remember what I said primary key is? That is the identifier of individual records inside the table. Meaning that for me to identify these records for political parties in this result table, I must specify the primary key, which is the ID number. So I say our primary key, we say this ID. So I say ID. I say comma. Now that we have specified that information, the next question becomes, what is that information that is going to reference this our table in this other table or outside this our own table? What is that information that we are going to use each time we want to reference this results table in any other table except from this very results table? That is what we call the foreign key.
So I must come here
So I must
and
come here
enter
and
the
enter
foreign key,
foreign key
because the foreign key is
because the
that
foreign
key
key is that key
that
that
references
references
a table
a
other
table
than
other
itself.
than itself.
So I will say foreign
So I will
key,
say foreign key.
I give a
I
space,
give a space.
I can then
I
come and
can then come
specify
and
the
specify
name of the
the
key.
name of the key.
In this case,
In this case,
I'm going to use
I'm
this.
going to use this.
Let me just use this
Let me just
political
use this
party
political party ID
as my foreign key.
as my foreign key.
Now, after using it,
Now, after using it,
I'm going to let me just close
I'm
the
going to
bracket
let me just close the bracket
since that's not our
since that's
full
not
bracket.
our full bracket.
Sorry, let me remove
Sorry,
this
let me
bracket
remove
here.
this bracket here.
Open bracket.
Open bracket. Political
Party
party ID.
So now, I want
So
to use
now
this to
I want to use
reference
this to reference
the tables
the tables
outside this very
outside
table.
this very table.
So which table do
So
we
which
have
table do we have
outside this table
outside this table
within
within
this
this
database
database at the
is this
moment?
political parties
Is this
table.
political parties
So
table?
for that reason,
So for that reason,
I have to reference it
I have
to
to
this
reference
political
it to
parties,
these political
which is the name of
parties,
this
which is the name
first
of
table.
this first table.
So I'm just going to say
So I'm
use
just going
the
to
query
say
statement
use
called
the query
reference.
statement called
Reference.
reference.
Since I want to
Reference.
reference it,
Since I want to
I say
reference it,
reference.
I say reference.
I'm referencing it
I'm referencing
to
it
this
to
political
this
parties table.
political parties table.
So I'm just going to say
So I'm just going to say
political parties.
political parties.
Now
Now
we
we
already have
already
our
have
primary key,
our primary
which
key,
is ID.
which is
So I'm
ID.
just going
So
to
I'm
say
just going
political
to say
parties.
political parties,
Their primary key is what?
their
ID.
primary key is what? ID,
Since that's the unique
since that's
identifier
the
that
unique
represents that
identifier that
table.
represents that table.
So once I'm done with
So
that,
once I'm done with
I can
that,
then come
I can then come
and run this.
and run this.
So it's expected
So
that
it's
at this
expected
point,
that at this point,
SQL should have
SQL should have
been able to
been
read
able to read
this data
this
we have
data we
added.
have added.
So let's run it to
So
see if
let's
it will
run
be
it to see
run
if it will be
successfully.
run successfully.
And it's expected that
And it's
as always
expected
you
that
always
as
go through
always, you always go
your
through
query statement to
your
be
query
sure you did
statement
not
to be
make
sure you
any
did not
error.
make any error.
So when I ran it,
So when I ran it,
you notice
you
that it
notice
ran
that it ran
successfully.
successfully.
How do you know?
How do you
It
know?
ticked
It
green
ticked green
below.
below.
Hello.
Hello,
I hope you all can still hear me.
I
We'll
hope
be
you all
rounding up shortly.
can still hear me. We'll be rounding
Yes.
up shortly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So now that is
So
ran,
now that it's
we have
ran,
to go and
we have to go
preview
and
to view
preview
that information.
to view
Now
that
there are two
information.
ways you can
Now
work
there are
here
two
now.
ways you can work here
Remember
now.
the first political
Remember the
parties we
first
did
political parties we
is here.
did.
It was
It's
opened
here.
as a new
It was
SQL
opened
file
as a new SQL file
separately here.
separately here.
You can refresh it
You
here
can refresh it here
in most cases,
in
or
most
you run
cases,
this
or you run this
to see
to see if that new information is going to be captured.
While
While to create a new file,
under
under file menu, we have it here.
create a new SQL
Tab. We call it tab or file where you execute your queries. But now we have created and ran this successfully for these new results, and we have linked both of them together. We want to view it. We will come to the database. That's where we're going to view it. So let's go and refresh. So when we refresh, if we come here under election, we have tables, we have political parties. You can see that under tables, under election database, under tables, we now have two tables. I believe everyone can see this. We now have two tables. One is political parties, and the second, which is results. Now, under political parties, you observe that we have our primary key, which is captured under index. In our next class, I'll teach you about index. It's very important. The index is very important. Now, under index, you see the primary key. Let's go to results table. Under result table, you come to foreign keys. You see the foreign key we have linked up. Now, if you look below, you can see that under foreign key, it has linked up political parties table with the results table, and that's what it's showing you here. Hello? Hello?
I hear you.
Okay. Now, let's take a little break and move ahead. We'll touch this linking up later. Now, since we have done this, how about we saying we want to impute those parties inside their respective columns? Here you use what we call the insert command. And normally there are two ways I do mine. If you happen to insert into a particular column, it's either you come to the database, look for that table, go to the column. You can right click. You see where we have send to SQL editor. Send to SQL editor. When you come there, you can come down and click insert statement. So this is normally what beginners do. They come and follow this and say insert statement, and it will capture the statement for you immediately for you to be able to insert your information. It will do it for you. But to follow the normal advanced pattern, what you're to do is just for you to write that statement called insert. So what I can just do, I'll just come under here and say insert. I've told you, whatever way you want to spell it, if you want to mix it, one small letter, capital letter, like this, it doesn't concern SQL. SQL just own is just provided that spelling is going to end up with insert. It's like that spelling is insert, no problem. So let me just select this quick. So insert. Now, want to insert into which of the table? Is it results we want to put or political party? We have not put in political party, so we can't impute their results. For that reason, I will say insert into political parties table. So I'll come and say insert into. So into is a statement you use when you want to insert into any of your table in your database. So I say insert into. What's the name of the table? Political parties. I say political parties. Always make sure it's correct. It reflects what it is. So insert into political parties. So once I've done that,
what do I want to insert
what do I
into
want to
that
insert
party?
into that party?
What do I want to insert? Which
What do
of
I
the
want to
column do I
insert?
want to
Which of the
insert
column
my
do I want to
information?
insert my
I want to
information?
insert into
I want to insert into,
the name.
I want to insert the name.
You can see. I want to insert
You can see, I
into
want to
the name,
insert into the name,
column. So I
the
will say
name
bracket
column.
open,
So I'll say bracket open,
name.
name.
Name of political party.
Name of political party.
Or can just leave it name.
Or I can just leave it name.
So once I've done that, I then come
So
down
once I've done that,
and
I then come
specify
down and
the
specify
contents that I want to
the
impute.
content that I want to impute.
So maybe I want to impute,
So maybe I want to impute,
I say values.
I say values. I'll use a statement called values.
So what do I want to impute? What are the contents?
So what do I want to impute? What are the contents?
I bring my bracket open.
I bring brackets open at each time.
Unlike Excel VBA,
which
you will work
with double quotes. Excel VBA is also a programming language. We call it an object-oriented programming language. Now, unlike that one,
SQL uses one quote for text.
SQL uses one quote for text. If it was number you want to insert, you don't need to put any quotes. You just put the number.
First political party is APC.
So I can say first political party is APC. So I can just say APC. Quote. Bracket close.
This specifies the first row.
This specifies the first row in that column.
Now let's say
I also want to put another row. Now remember that we have not entered IDs.
Let's just continue. We say the second.
Let's just continue. We say the second party is PDP. We say PDP. We use our quotes. Bracket close. Comma. Let's say the third we might want to work with. We'll say quotes.
Labour Party, LP.
Labour Party, LP.
We use our quotes.
We use our quotes.
And the last, you can just put.
And last, you can just put.
ADC.
Let's put ADC.
Or AAC.
Or AAC.
Sowore candidate.
For this Sowore candidate.
Even if he lost.
Or let's put NNPP. For Kwankwaso.
That's the 4 major parties.
NNPP.
Once you're done, you use your semicolon.
The 4 major parties.
Once you're done,
you use your semicolon.
And of course, you know
that if we happen to say that we are done with this and that we want to run this, we'll go and click on the execute to be able to run that information.
So let's run it. So it was not executed.
Meaning that there is an error. So let's
want to insert these parties.
Insert these parties into the name of political party column.
Instead of just name. Let's see if it will run.
Instead of just name. Let's see if it will run.
Okay, good. You can see that it ran successfully. Hello.
Okay, good. You can see that it ran successfully. Hello.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Hello.
So you can see that it ran successfully because,
We can hear you.
okay, okay. So you can see that it ran successfully.
Okay.
The reason it
So you
didn't
can
run
see
before was because we use a short name. So you must always
that it ran
specify the colon in full. The
successfully
exact way the name
because,
is displayed.
okay, okay. So you
So
can see that
once
it
you
ran
have run
successfully.
this,
The reason it
you
didn't
can
run
then
before was
decide
because we used
that
a
please
short name.
we want to
So you
see
must see
this table
this table
based on
these
this information
informations we
we
have
have inserted
inserted into
into it.
it.
So this way we are going to round up into
Tonight's
tonight's class
class once
once
we
we
view the table
to be sure
to be
that these
sure
values
that these
have been
values
inserted.
have been
So
inserted.
to view,
So to
we
view,
use
we
the
use
select
the
statement
select statement
in SQL.
in SQL when you want
Now,
to view.
since you want to
Now,
view
since you want to view
and
and
it's going to be a new
it's
query
going to be a
that
new
will end
query
with
that
its
will
own
end
separate
with its own
semicolon.
separate semicolon.
For SQL to be able to read
For
it
SQL to be able
successfully,
to read it successfully,
you must give a space,
you must give a space,
one
one
row
row
space,
space, and
and
come down
write the new
and
statement.
write the new statement.
So I'll say
So I'll say select we say select
from. Now,
from. Now, SQL
demands
the syntax demands you
an
always use
asterisk.
an asterisk.
Now, what the
Now,
asterisk
what the
does
asterisk does
is this.
is this.
Remember,
Remember, we've already created a
between
relationship
political parties
between political parties
and results.
and
And I've
results.
told you what you
And
use
I've
to
told
create
you what you use
relationship
to create a
between
relationship
political parties and
between
results,
political
or between
parties
your
and
two data
results, or
sets,
between your two
is
data
what we
sets
call the foreign key.
is what we call the
And we have
foreign
done that
key.
already.
We have done.
Now, we want to view
Now
this
we want to
political
view
parties table
this political
to be sure
parties table
or to
to
know
be
if
sure or to
what
know
we actually
if
worked on
what we
have
actually worked on
reflected.
have
So say
reflected.
select
So we say
and
select
query from.
and query from.
Select our query from.
Select our
That is
query
stands for
from.
query. From
That
where
is that
we
stands for
want to
query.
select our query
From where
from.
we want to
What's the
select
name
our
of the
query
table?
from. What's the name of the
Political
table?
parties table.
Political
So I will come
parties
here and
table.
say
So I will come here and
political
say
parties.
political parties.
Once I'm done with that, I'll just say
Once I'm done with
semicolon.
that, I'll just say semicolon
Then I will run it. Let's
and
see
I will run
if it
it.
will be
Let's
successful.
see if it will be
So when I
successful.
run it, what
So
do
when
you
I run
observe?
it, what do you
Hello?
observe?
You
Hello?
observe that it
You
ran
observe that
successfully.
it ran
Always
successfully.
put your eye on the action
Always
output
put your
area.
eye on the action
It's
output
ticked green.
area. It's ticked green.
And you can see it popped
And you
up
can see
the
it popped
list
up
of political
the
parties
list
that
of
we
political
have.
parties that we have.
And now,
And
if you
now,
observe, you'll notice that ID number
observe,
automatically pops
you'll
up
notice that
itself.
ID number
Why? It's
automatically
because
pops
of
up
auto
itself.
increment statement.
Why?
We've
It's
already given
because
that
of auto
command statement
increment statement.
that
We've
please
already
and
given that
please,
command statement that please and
these
please,
IDs should always
these IDs should
generate
always generate
as the number of political parties
as the number of
are
political
captured.
parties
And
are
that's what
captured.
happens here.
And that's what happens here.
So you can now cross check
So you can
for
now cross
APC.
check for
You can
APC.
now cross check
You can
for
now cross
PDP.
check for
You can now
PDP.
cross check
You can now cross check
for the other parties.
for the other parties, which are all
Now
here.
we are going to end with this.
Now we are going to end with
Let's say
this.
for example,
Let's say, for
okay,
example,
you don't want
okay,
to
you don't want to
you don't want to
um
capture all
you don't want to capture
the
all
parties.
the
Maybe
parties.
you've gotten results
Maybe you've
and you
gotten
want to
results
capture
and you
just
want to capture just
the first two parties or the
the
first three
first two
parties
parties
since we
or the
have four
first three
parties,
parties.
maybe the
Since we have
first
four
top three
parties, maybe the
parties.
first top three
You can enter
parties,
a simple
you can
query
enter a
statement
simple query statement
using what we call
using what we
limits,
call
the limit
limits,
statement.
the limit
So what will
statement.
I do? I'll
So what
just
will I
come
do? I'll just
and say
come and say select
select
my query, select my
from
query from
name of the party, political parties. Let me just copy it.
name of the party, political parties. Let me just copy it.
Select my query from political parties.
Select my query from political parties.
Now, I don't want all the parties.
Now,
I just
I
want
don't
a
want
specific
all
number
the
of the
parties.
parties.
I just want
So what
a
will I do?
specific number of the parties.
Since
So what
that's
will I
my
do?
target,
Since
I'm
that's
going to
my
specify
target,
using what we call
I'm
the
going to
limit.
specify using what we call the limit.
So I will come and say limit. I want the first
So I
three.
will come
So I will
and
say
say
3.
limit.
Then I use my semicolon.
I want the first 3.
And then
So I will say 3.
so if I run it, if it's
Then I use my
successful,
semicolon.
notice that it's going to bring only the first 3
And then
from
I,
this data set.
if I run it, if it's successful, you
Hello.
notice that it's
So
going
I
to
believe you
bring
can see
only
that it
the
brought
first
the
3
first 3
from this data set.
from the data set.
Hello. So I believe you can see that it brought the first 3 from the data set.
Hello. Any question before we will be ending?
Hello. Any question before we will be ending here?
I have a question.
Okay, sir.
If you already have a data
Okay,
set
sir.
and you want to edit something on that data set, what do? You are not trying to create afresh. You just want to edit something on it. So how do you handle it?
Okay. If you already have a
Okay.
data set,
If
it
you
therefore
already have a
implies
data
that you have
set,
to
it
import the
therefore
data
implies
set
that
first
you
of
have
all.
to import the data set
Now,
first of
once you
all.
have imported it,
Now, once you have imported
which
it,
is going to be part of a
which
navigator
is
screen,
going to
you
be
also
part
use
of
the
a
select.
navigator screen, you also use the select.
Now we have a
Okay.
particular
Now
statement
we
we call
have
the
a
update.
particular statement we call the
Are you
update.
there, sir?
Are you there, sir?
Yes, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Hello?
I have a question.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello, sir.
Hello.
I
Hello?
have a question.
Yeah, I'm not done.
Hello.
Can the person that asked the first question,
Hello.
I
can you
have a
hear me?
question.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
done.
the person
Can
that
the
asked the
person
first
that
question,
asked the
can you
first
hear me
question
now? Can
can
you hear me?
you hear me? Yeah, the person that asked the first question, can you
Hello, sir, can you hear me?
hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. I can
All
hear you
right.
now.
I said that. Sorry,
Hello,
let
sir.
me.
Can you hear
Okay,
me?
thank God it's recording.
Yes, I
I
can
s-
hear you now.
okay. I said you use the update statement.
All right. I
Update.
said that. Sorry, let
No.
me. Okay,
Yeah,
thank God
that's
it's
what you
recording.
use. Update.
Okay, I said you
Okay. It
use
is a
the
command
update
in
statement
SQL that
or
you use when you want to make changes
updates.
to your
Yeah,
existing
that's what you
records
use. Updates.
in a data set. You use that
Okay, it is
statement
a
called
command
update.
in SQL that you use when you want to make changes
Maybe
to
you
your
want to
existing
change a
records
particular value.
in
That's
a
what
data
you
set.
use.
You use that statement called update.
In our next
Maybe
class,
you want
I
to
have a
change a
lot of data
particular
sets.
value.
So what I'm going to do in our
That's
next
what you
class,
use.
I will bring them to class. So work with them.
You call out the tape,
In our next class,
the
I
name
have a
of.
lot of data sets.
You first of all
So what I'm going
select.
to do in our next
Yeah,
class,
this is how it works. You
I
first of all
will
select.
bring
Okay,
them to
you select
class.
from that data set.
So work with them.
You say select from. Now, when you're selecting from,
All right, thank you.
when you're selecting
You
from
first of
such
all
data set,
select.
you
Yeah, this is how
specify.
it works.
This
You
is
first
what
of
you
all
do.
select.
Are you there?
Okay,
Let me
you
show you
select
this.
from that data set.
Let me open a new
You say
SQL
select
program.
from. Now, when you're selecting
SQL
from,
tab. I hope you can see my screen, sir.
when you're selecting from such data set, you specify this is what you will do. Are you there? Let me show you this. Let me open.
Can you see it brings up
Can you
all
see
those
it brings up
information
all
in
those
the data
information
set?
in the data set?
Okay.
Hello. I don't know if
Hello,
the
I
network is
don't know if the
disturbing.
network is disturbing.
I can hear you. I can hear you. And I
Okay.
can see the screen.
Okay.
Okay,
So once
okay.
you
So
have a data
once
set, the
you
first
have a
thing
data
is
set,
to
the
select
first thing
from
is
that
to
data set.
select from that data set.
Now,
Now,
since we want to change
Since we want to change, you will now use what we call update. You now say update.
Now, what do you want to update?
Now, what do you want to
First
update?
thing, with the information you want to
First thing, with
update,
the
you also
information
have
you
to
want to
specify the
update, you
table
also have to
where it
specify the
is.
table where it
The name of the
is.
table
The
already
name
is
of the table
participants.
already
Maybe
is
I want to
participants.
change
Maybe I want to
because
change
maybe inside
because maybe
participants,
inside participants
we
here,
already have
we already have
column which
column
contains student
which
ID,
contains students ID,
participants number,
their
and the
courses,
amount they have paid
and the
for the
amount they have
training.
paid for the training.
So maybe I want to change
So
for a
maybe I want
particular
to change for a
participant.
particular participant.
Maybe that the participants
Maybe that the
paid
participants
20,000.
paid
Meanwhile,
20,000.
I recorded
Meanwhile, I
15,000.
recorded
So I can use the update to update it.
15,000.
So I have to just specify the name,
I can use the
like
update
John,
to
for example.
update it.
I will
So I have to
specify
just
that
specify the
update
name, like for example,
participants.
John, for example.
Name of the
I
table
will
is
specify that
participants.
update
My time
participant.
is up already
No,
because
the
we have
table is participant. Like time is up
another
already because we have
session in a different
another session
program I
in a
need to
different
be there now.
program I need
So
to
this is just
be
what you
there
will do.
now. So this is just what you will do.
Update participants.
Update participants.
You come down,
You come
set.
down,
Use this statement called
set.
set. Now,
Use
which
this
column
statement called
and what
set.
do you want to put?
Now, which column
If there are
and what do you want to
conditions too,
put?
we can
If
say
there are
set so
conditions too,
so
we
information
can say
here
set so
equal to
information
the
here
new
equal
information.
to the new
So
information.
that's just what you will do.
So that's just what you
Are
will
you
do.
there? If, for
Are
example,
you there?
set
If, for
amount paid
example, set
for
amount
John,
paid
that's what I'm just going to put there equal to this.
for John, that's
So
what I'm
that's
just
just
going
what
to
I'm
put there
trying to
equal to
point out
this.
for you to
So that's
understand.
just what I'm
So
trying
you
to
must
point out
understand
for you to
that
understand. So you must
um,
understand that um,
the update command, you
the
use
update
it
command,
when you
you
want to
use
change
it
existing
when you
records.
want to change existing records in your table.
Maybe you want to update a
Maybe
particular
you want to
value,
update a
you
particular
can do that.
value, you can do that.
So you can be able to do that. So it's
So you
always
can be
better
able
to
to
select.
fóònù wà lọ́wọ́ yín mo ti rẹ́dí àti ó yẹ yá ló bá mú pé fóònù bá mi wá lọ́wọ́ ó
Just
wà.
say set participant's name.
just set participant's name.
But what we are even
But
supposed to do, we're
what we are
supposed to
even supposed to
specify
do, we're
that we are
supposed to
using this
specify
data
that we are
set,
using this data set
so that that one is going to
so
be
that
active.
that
But
one
let's
is going
just
to be
run this
active.
quick
But
and
let's
see if it
just
will
do
run.
this quick. Let's see if
So
it will
set
run.
participant's name
So set
or
participant's name
course
or
for these
cost
students. Course
for these students. Cost
equal to what? What do you want to
equal to what?
use
What do you want to
as your
use
course?
as your cost? We can say SQL
Our codes SQL.
or quotes SQL. Then
You can also put
can also
the
put
participant's
the
name.
participant's name.
Maybe his name is not
Maybe his
John.
name is not John.
You can say set
So we can say
participant's name.
set participant's name.
Equal to Mike.
Equal to Mike.
Always put your quotes,
Always put your
comma.
quotes, comma.
You can also put our equal
We
to.
can also put our equal to.
Also specify his
Also
cost.
specify his cost.
Should also be changed.
Should also be changed.
So since we
So
always have
since
a
we
unique
always
ID
have a
number,
unique
we
ID
can now
number,
use
we
the
can now
statements
use the
where
statements
his ID number.
where his ID number. You can say where his ID number, because you are working with large range of data. So you say where his ID, the student's ID is equal to 1. Since it's a number, no need of putting in all those quotes. So once you're done with this, you run it, it's going to be successful. So this is where we are going to end for tonight's class. So thank you very much, everyone. Please practice, and I'm going to compress and send the record to the group so everyone can practice. So prepare for next class. All right, thank you, sir. That's Yola. Thank you. That's
Okay, thank you so
Henry.
much. Bye bye.
Okay, thank you, and good night, everyone.